I'm Catherine Mitchell, 41, and I never thought my 12-year-old daughter would save our family from financial ruin. When my husband Michael stole $45,000 from our daughter's college fund to lavish on his 27-year-old mistress, I was devastated. But Abigail, with her quiet intelligence and the financial knowledge her father had ironically taught her, devised a plan that would force him to face the consequences of his betrayal. If you're watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you're viewing from, hit that like and subscribe button, and prepare yourself for the story of how my middle schooler outsmarted the man who was supposed to protect our family's future. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Portland, where my parents taught me the value of hard work and financial responsibility from an early age. They weren't wealthy by any means. My dad was a high school teacher and my mom worked part-time as a nurse, but they managed to save enough to help with my college education. So, I was 24 and had just landed my first serious job at a digital marketing agency. Michael, 26 and already an investment analyst at a respected firm, approached me after my presentation on consumer behavior trends. His confidence was magnetic, and his genuine interest in my work was flattering. Within minutes of conversation, I felt like I'd known him for years. Most people don't understand the connection between psychology and financial decisions, he said over coffee afterward. But you clearly do. That's rare. Our courtship was a whirlwind: dinners at trendy restaurants, weekend getaways to Vancouver, and long conversations about our dreams for the future. Within 6 months we were inseparable. And after a year, he proposed during a sunset sail on Puget Sound. The diamond wasn't enormous, but it was exactly what I would have chosen. I want to build something meaningful with you. We rented a small apartment in Seattle's Ballard neighborhood and focused on our careers. Michael received 2 promotions in 3 years, while I steadily climbed the ranks at my agency. We made a pact to live below our means, banking my entire year-end bonus each year and half of Michael's. By our 3rd anniversary, we had saved enough for a down payment on a modest 3-bedroom house in North Seattle. The day we moved in, Michael carried me across the threshold and whispered, "This is just the beginning of our empire." I loved his ambition and his focus on our shared future. Our financial philosophy was simple but strict. We would save aggressively for retirement and our future children's education, while allowing ourselves small luxuries to maintain quality of life. Each month after paying our mortgage and bills, we automatically transferred money to our retirement accounts and a high-yield savings account we called our Family Future Fund. When I discovered I was pregnant with Abigail 2 years later, Michael immediately set up a $529 college savings plan. "Our child will never have to worry about student debt like you did," he promised. I could sense something special about her. She had Michael's thoughtful dark eyes and my determination, apparent even as she worked to latch during our first nursing session. "She's going to be brilliant," Michael said, gently stroking her downy head. "Look at how she observes everything." He wasn't wrong. Abigail reached all her developmental milestones early. She spoke in complete sentences before she was 2, could read simple books by 3, and showed an unusual ability to understand patterns and numbers by the time she started kindergarten. Lucas arrived 6 years after his sister, a surprise addition that completed our family. Unlike his sister's intensity, Lucas brought lighthearted joy to our home. He was outgoing and athletic like Michael, preferring soccer practice to reading. The children balanced each other perfectly, and our family life settled into a comfortable rhythm. By the time Abigail turned 10, Michael had established a weekend ritual with her that I found endearing. Every Sunday morning, they would sit at the kitchen table with his laptop, reviewing basic investment concepts and playing what they called the stock game, a simulated investment portfolio that Abigail managed with her father's guidance. "Mom, I made $83 on my pretend stocks this week," she would announce proudly. Michael beamed during these sessions. "She's a natural," he'd tell me. "She understands compound interest better than some adults I work with." I was so caught up in the beauty of their father-daughter bond that I missed the first signs of trouble. Looking back, the changes in Michael began subtly around Abigail's 11th birthday. His business trips, previously rare, suddenly increased in frequency. He began working late several nights a week. I asked one night after the children were asleep, "Better than okay?" he replied, not meeting my eyes. We're expanding the client portfolio. It's demanding, but the bonus will be worth it. I accepted this explanation, especially when he arrived home one Friday with an expensive bottle of champagne to celebrate a big client acquisition. His enthusiasm seemed genuine, and I pushed aside my unease. Then came the physical changes. Michael joined an upscale gym downtown, invested in a completely new wardrobe of tailored shirts and designer suits, and began using expensive cologne. At 43, he suddenly seemed concerned about aging, making jokes about keeping up with the young guys at the office. You've always looked fantastic, I reassured him, though I wondered why my opinion no longer seemed sufficient. The passwords on his phone and laptop changed. His formerly open financial discussions became vague. Credit card statements that had always been left on the desk for my review now went directly to his email. When I asked about specific expenses, he became irritable. Do you really need to micromanage every decision I make? He snapped once when I questioned a $400 charge at a high-end restaurant on a night he claimed to be working late. I took a client there. It's business. I backed off, blaming his mood swings on work pressure and midlife insecurities. Part of me didn't want to see what was happening. We had built a good life. A beautiful home, healthy children, stable careers, and financial security. I wasn't ready to acknowledge that something fundamental might be changing. Meanwhile, Abigail's interest in finance deepened. Michael upgraded their stock game to include more complex concepts like diversification, risk assessment, and market analysis. He showed her how to research companies and evaluate performance metrics, skills that seemed advanced for a middle schooler, but that she absorbed eagerly. Dad says I should understand money if I want to be independent, she told me one evening while completing her math homework. He says most women let men control their finances, and that's a mistake. The irony of this lesson, coming from Michael, would only become apparent later. The truth emerged on an ordinary Tuesday in April. I was searching for the warranty for our refrigerator, which had begun making an ominous humming sound, while rummaging through Michael's desk drawer. I found a credit card statement from an account I didn't recognize. My hand trembled as I scanned the paper. Purchases from Tiffany & Company for $3,200. A weekend charge at the Olympic Hotel downtown for over $1,000. Multiple dinner tabs at restaurants I'd never visited. All in months when Michael claimed to be traveling for business. I felt physically ill, my stomach clenching as I sank into Michael's office chair. I told myself there must be a reasonable explanation. Perhaps these were client gifts. Business expenses he hadn't wanted to put through the company for some reason. But deep down I knew. That evening, after the children were asleep, I confronted him in our bedroom. The statement clutched in my hand. What is this? I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. Michael glanced at the paper, and his face performed a series of rapid transformations. Surprise, anger, calculation, and finally a practiced calm. That's my personal card, he said smoothly. For work expenses I get reimbursed for later. Since when do you buy Tiffany jewelry for clients? Or spend weekends with them at luxury hotels in the same city where we live? His expression hardened. You're searching through my things now? That's a violation of my privacy, Catherine. Don't turn this around on me, I said, my voice rising despite my best efforts. Who is she, Michael? You're being paranoid, he scoffed. This is exactly why I keep some finances separate. You overreact to every expenditure. We argued in circles for nearly an hour, with Michael alternating between righteous indignation and dismissive patronizing. He never admitted anything. But I had access to the passwords in our family's shared digital vault. What I discovered shattered my world. Our joint checking and savings accounts seemed intact. Our retirement accounts hadn't been touched. But when I logged into Abigail's college fund, the $529 plan we had faithfully funded since before her birth, the balance was dramatically lower than it should have been. According to my calculations, approximately $45,000 had been withdrawn through a series of transfers over the past 6 months. I called the investment company, my voice shaking as I verified our identity and asked about the withdrawals. Yes, Mrs. Mitchell, your husband initiated those transfers through our online portal, the representative confirmed. Since he's a co-owner of the account, No additional authorization was required. I hung up and vomited in the kitchen sink. When Michael returned home that evening, I was waiting at the dining room table, laptop open to the college fund account, a glass of whiskey, which I rarely drank half empty beside me. "The children are at my mother's," I said when he walked in. "We need to talk about the $45,000 you stole from our daughter's education fund." His face went pale, then flushed with anger. "I didn't steal anything. I'm a co-owner of that account. Don't play legal games with me," I said, surprised by the cold steadiness of my voice. "That money was for Abigail's future. What did you do with it?" After several minutes of denials and deflections, the facade finally cracked. Michael slumped into a chair across from me. "It's temporary," he said. "I needed to help someone out. I'm going to put it all back before Abigail needs it for college." "Who is she?" I asked again. This time he answered. "Her name is Jessica. She works in our marketing department." He paused. "She's 27, and she needed help with some medical bills." "Medical bills?" I repeated flatly. "Yes, she had a procedure." He trailed off, unwilling to elaborate. "How long has this been going on?" "About 8 months, he admitted. "But it's not what you think. She really needed financial help, and I care about her. I couldn't just turn my back on her." "So instead you stole from your daughter's future?" My voice rose. "You've been funding your affair with our children's education money." "It's a loan," he shouted, standing suddenly. "I told you I'll put it back. Jessica will help me repay it once she's back on her feet." Our argument escalated, voices rising beyond the boundaries of our usual restraint. In my fury and pain, I didn't hear the front door open. Didn't realize the children had returned early from my mother's until Lucas's small voice broke through our shouting. "Mom? Dad? Why are you yelling?" We both turned to see our children standing in the dining room doorway. Lucas, 8 years old and sensitive, had tears streaming down his face. Beside him, Abigail stood perfectly still, her expression unreadable as her eyes moved from my tear-stained face to the financial statements spread across the table. Michael stormed out minutes later, muttering about staying at a friend's place. I knew instinctively that friend meant Jessica. That night, I held Lucas until he fell asleep, reassuring him that sometimes adults disagreed but that I would always be there for him. Abigail, however, retreated to her room and closed the door. When I checked on her later, she was sitting cross-legged on her bed, staring at her laptop screen with intense concentration. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" I asked. "I'm fine," she replied without looking up. "I'm just processing." In the days that followed, Michael communicated only through terse text messages about picking up clothes or brief visits with the children. He made no mention of the missing money or any plan to return it. When I brought it up, he would respond with vague promises or deflect by questioning my parenting decisions in his absence. I tried desperately to maintain normalcy for the children's sake, helping with homework, preparing meals, continuing their activities, while privately falling apart. At night, after they were asleep, I would sit at the kitchen table with spreadsheets and calculators, trying to figure out how to rebuild our financial security. Throughout this turmoil, I was so consumed by my own emotional hurricane that I failed to recognize the determination forming behind my daughter's thoughtful eyes. 1 week after discovering Michael's betrayal, I met with Patricia Levinson, a divorce attorney recommended by a colleague. Her office was modest but professional, with degrees from prestigious universities hanging on the wall behind her desk. "What about our other finances?" I asked. "Could there be more I don't know about?" Patricia's expression was grim. "In my experience, when someone begins secreting away funds or misusing joint assets, it's rarely an isolated incident. I'd recommend a full forensic accounting of your finances as soon as possible." She was right. Over the next 2 weeks, with Patricia's guidance, I uncovered additional financial deceptions. Michael had opened 2 personal credit cards I knew nothing about, with combined balances exceeding $22,000. He had taken a loan against his 401k for $15,000. Most disturbing of all, he had refinanced our home 6 months earlier, taking out $30,000 in equity, all without my knowledge. "But that's impossible," I protested when the mortgage company confirmed the transaction. I would have had to sign the paperwork. An investigation revealed that Michael had forged my signature, a fact that would later become significant in our legal proceedings. In total, Michael had diverted nearly $112,000 from our family's finances to fund his relationship with Jessica. The college fund was only part of the damage. My secure financial world had shattered. With Michael moved out and contributing minimal support, I faced the prospect of maintaining our home, caring for 2 children, and somehow rebuilding our depleted savings on my single income. Even if the courts eventually ordered restitution, the immediate reality was daunting. To compound the stress, rumors of layoffs began circulating at my company, though my position seemed secure. The uncertainty added another layer of anxiety to my already precarious situation. Each night after putting Lucas to bed, he still needed extra reassurance since Michael's departure. I would sit at the kitchen table with a growing stack of financial statements, legal documents, and budget projections. I tried to keep these late-night sessions private, not wanting to burden the children with adult concerns. One evening, as I calculated how long our emergency fund would last if I lost my job, the devastating arithmetic brought me to tears. With my face in my hands, I didn't hear Abigail enter the kitchen until she spoke. "We're going to be okay, Mom." I looked up to find my 12-year-old daughter standing beside me in her NASA pajamas, her expression far too serious for a child her age. "Of course we are, sweetie," I said, torn between protecting her from adult problems and acknowledging the reality she was clearly aware of. "Yes," I finally admitted. "I'm trying to figure out our finances without that money." She pulled out a chair and sat beside me. "How much did he take altogether?" "Abigail, you don't need to worry about." "Mom," she interrupted, her voice steady. I explained the situation in simplified but truthful terms. The missing money, the additional debts, and the challenge of recovering what Michael had taken. "So even if the judge makes Dad pay it back, we might not get the money soon," she summarized. "That's right. These things can take time in the legal system." Abigail nodded thoughtfully. "What about Grandma and Grandpa? Could they help?" The question touched on a conversation I'd had the previous day with my parents. They had immediately offered financial assistance when I finally told them about the separation. "We've been saving for retirement, Katie," my father had said. "But family comes first." I had a similar conversation with Lucas, though much simplified for his 8-year-old understanding. His primary concern was heartbreakingly basic. "Will I still get to have my birthday party?" he asked, referring to the celebration we had planned for the following month. "Of course you will," I promised, hugging him tightly. "Some things might change for our family, but we'll always celebrate the important stuff." As the children processed this new reality in their different ways, I noticed a striking contrast in their responses. Lucas expressed his feelings openly, crying when missing his father, asking direct questions about when Michael would return home, and seeking extra affection and reassurance. Abigail, however, turned inward. She maintained her excellent grades and participated in family activities, but spent increasing amounts of time alone in her room with her computer. When Michael came for his court-mandated visitations, she was polite but reserved, nothing like the adoring daughter who had once treasured their Sunday morning financial lessons. During one particularly difficult evening, after both children were supposedly asleep, I sat alone at the kitchen table reviewing our finances yet again. The numbers hadn't changed, united in a new kind of understanding that transcended the traditional parent-child relationship. "I miss how things used to be," she finally whispered. "But I think we're going to be stronger because of this." Her wisdom took my breath away. I put my arm around her slender shoulders and held her close, wondering when my little girl had grown so insightful. "I think you're right," I said. "And whatever happens, we'll face it together." I noticed Abigail asking increasingly specific questions about her father's work and financial arrangements. "Does Dad's company have a special system for their clients' accounts?" she asked one evening while helping me prepare dinner. "I believe they use several investment platforms," I replied, slightly puzzled by the question. "Why do you ask?" "Just curious about how financial systems work," she said with a shrug. "Dad always said understanding money is important." A few days later. Mom, when Dad set up our accounts, did he use similar passwords for different things? Is that common? The questions continued, each seemingly innocent but focused on specific aspects of Michael's financial habits and work practices. At the time, distracted by legal consultations and my own emotional turmoil, I didn't connect these inquiries to anything concerning. What I did notice was Abigail's increased time on her computer. The screen would quickly change whenever I entered her room, switching from whatever she was viewing to her homework or a YouTube video. One afternoon, I glimpsed her quickly tucking a notebook under her math textbook when I brought laundry to her room. When I asked what she was working on, she mumbled something about just some notes for a project. My first indication that something unusual was happening came when I received a call from Melissa, Michael's administrative assistant at his investment firm. Mrs. Mitchell, I'm sorry to bother you, but we've had some inquiries about account access protocols that seem to be coming from your home IP address, she said, sounding confused. Mr. Mitchell suggested I check with you since he's not currently residing there. Account access protocols? I repeated. I haven't been trying to access anything related to Michael's work. After assuring Melissa I would look into it, I sat at the kitchen table, puzzled. I hadn't attempted to access any of Michael's work systems. I wouldn't even know how. The only other person in the house who used the internet regularly was Abigail. I called up the stairs. Can you come down for a minute? She appeared in the kitchen doorway, her expression carefully neutral. Yes, Mom. I just got a strange call from Dad's office about someone from our house trying to access account information. Do you know anything about that? I wasn't trying to actually access anything. The explanation seemed plausible enough, and I had more pressing concerns than my daughter's internet browsing. I simply cautioned her about visiting secure financial sites and returned to reviewing documents from my attorney. 2 days later, Michael called, his voice tense with barely controlled anger. I said truthfully, maybe it's just routine security alerts. This isn't routine, he snapped. Someone's deliberately trying to access my professional accounts, and it's coming from the house. If you're trying to dig up dirt for the divorce, I'm not interested in your work accounts, I interrupted. Unlike you, I don't resort to financial deception. After he hung up, I sat for several minutes thinking. The coincidence was too striking. First Melissa's call, now Michael's accusation, both mentioning unusual access attempts coming from our home. I walked upstairs and gently knocked on Abigail's door. Come in, she called. She was sitting cross-legged on her bed, her laptop open before her. As I entered, she casually closed one browser tab, but not before I glimpsed what looked like a financial dashboard. Abigail, I said carefully, sitting on the edge of her bed, Dad just called. He says someone's been trying to access his work accounts, and the attempts are coming from our house. She met my eyes steadily. And you think it's me? Is it? A long moment passed between us. Then instead of denying it, she asked, Do you trust me, Mom? The question caught me off guard. Of course I trust you, but I'm not doing anything bad, she said firmly. I'm just using what Dad taught me. About money. About how systems work. Abigail, trying to access your father's work accounts could be illegal, regardless of your intentions. She shook her head quickly. I'm not hacking anything. I'm just exploring the family accounts that my name is on, like my college fund. Something in her tone made me suspicious. What exactly are you doing, Abigail? She closed her laptop and looked at me with an expression that seemed far older than her 12 years. I'm working on something that might help us. But I need you to trust me and not ask too many questions right now. I promise I'm not doing anything illegal. That's not reassuring, I said. I need to know what you're doing. She hesitated, then spoke carefully. Remember how Dad always said knowledge is power? He taught me a lot about how money moves around. I'm just following the money. Following what money? The money he took. She said simply. I think I might be able to trace where it went. And maybe how to get it back. I stared at my daughter, caught between admiration for her initiative and concern about her methods. Abigail, this isn't your responsibility. The legal system will handle this. The legal system is slow, she replied. And Dad is smart with money. He knows how to hide things. But he taught me how he thinks. Before I could respond, my phone rang. It was Michael again. I'll have to call you back, I told Michael and hung up. Abigail, I said firmly, whatever you're doing needs to stop now. This is between your father and me and the lawyers. She looked down at her hands. It's not just between you and Dad. It's my college fund. It's our family's security. It affects me and Lucas too. Her words hit me hard because they were true. This wasn't just about Michael's betrayal of me. It was about his betrayal of our children's future. I understand how you feel, I said gently. But trying to access your father's accounts isn't the solution. I'm not trying to hurt him, she insisted. I'm just trying to understand exactly what happened to our money. We still didn't have a complete picture of what Michael had done with all the funds he'd diverted. What exactly do you think you can discover that the professionals can't? I asked. A small, determined smile crossed Abigail's face. Dad always said I had a gift for seeing patterns he missed. And he taught me all his systems, Mom. All his patterns. He just never thought I'd use them to track what he was doing. I should have put an immediate stop to whatever Abigail was planning. As the parent, I should have prohibited her from any further involvement in the financial investigation. But in that moment, facing my brilliant, determined daughter, I found myself considering the possibility that she might indeed see something the professionals would miss. No more password reset attempts, I said firmly. Nothing that could be considered hacking or unauthorized access. If you really want to help, you can show me what you've already discovered. And we'll decide together if it's useful information for the lawyers. She nodded solemnly. Deal. That night, I lay awake wondering if I'd made the right decision. By allowing Abigail any involvement in uncovering her father's financial deceptions, was I inappropriately burdening her with adult problems? Or was I respecting her agency and intelligence in a situation that undeniably affected her future? I didn't have the answer. But events were already in motion that would soon bring everything to a head. 3 days after my conversation with Abigail, our doorbell rang unexpectedly on a Saturday morning. I asked, following him into the living room. He spun to face me, his face flushed with anger. Don't play innocent. Someone has placed a temporary freeze on several of my personal investment accounts pending a security review. My bank called about suspicious activity patterns on my credit cards. And this morning, I received an email from the 529 plan administrators about irregular withdrawal patterns that have been flagged for compliance review. Before I could respond, Michael's expression shifted from anger to disbelief as he looked at our 12-year-old daughter. What are you talking about, Abigail? I think we should all sit down. Taking seats on opposite ends of the sofa, while Abigail set up her laptop on the coffee table. First, Dad, I want to be clear that I haven't hacked anything, she began, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. I've only used access that I legitimately have, or information that was publicly available. Michael's face paled slightly. Abigail, this is a record of all the withdrawals from my college fund over the past 8 months, she said, pointing to the screen. I was able to access this because my name is on the account. You taught me how to review account activities last year, remember? Michael shifted uncomfortably. Abigail, these are complex adult matters that you don't fully understand. I understand that you took $45,327.82 from my college fund in 7 separate transactions, she interrupted, scrolling through her spreadsheet. What was interesting was tracking where that money went after you withdrew it. She clicked to another tab in her spreadsheet. You transferred the funds to your personal checking account at Wells Fargo, the one you opened last year that Mom didn't know about. From there, Abigail clicked to another screen showing a down payment on a condominium in Capitol Hill. You used $30,000 from that joint account as a down payment on a condo purchased in Jessica's name 3 months ago. The precision of her information was staggering. I looked at my daughter with a mixture of awe and concern, wondering how she had pieced together this financial trail. You taught me how to research property transactions last summer, she continued as if reading my thoughts. You said understanding real estate was an important part of financial literacy. Michael stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. Michael repeated. Abigail nodded. I recorded everything I did to show I never accessed anything illegally. This page shows the withdrawals from Mom's emergency fund. The one you said was just for family emergencies. And this one shows the loan against your 401k. For several minutes, she methodically walked us through her discoveries, a comprehensive map of every financial deception Michael had perpetrated. The level of detail was astonishing. She had even calculated the projected losses in compound interest from the depleted college fund. The total diverted funds come to $112,347.93, she concluded, not counting potential future losses from missed investment growth. Michael had resumed sitting, his face a mask of conflicting emotions, shock, anger, embarrassment, and something that looked almost like pride. "How did you figure out my account passwords?" he finally asked. "I didn't need to," Abigail replied. "For the accounts with my name, I could create my own access as an account holder. For tracking the money after it left those accounts, I used the research methods you taught me. The password reset attempts were just to verify my suspicions about which email accounts were linked to the new accounts you created." Michael opened his mouth to respond when his phone rang loudly. He glanced at the screen and visibly tensed. "It's Jessica," he said, declining the call. "She's probably calling about the temporary freeze on your joint account," Abigail noted. "I didn't place that freeze, by the way. The bank's security algorithms did. After I submitted a fraud investigation request with the documentation I'd gathered." I looked at my daughter in amazement. "Abigail, how did you know how to do that?" "Dad explained banking security protocols during one of our lessons," she said simply. "He said understanding how to protect assets was as important as knowing how to grow them." Michael's phone began ringing again. This time, he answered and stepped into the kitchen, his voice low and tense. I turned to Abigail. "I had no idea you were doing all this." "I know," she said. "I didn't want to get your hopes up until I was sure I could trace everything." "But why? Sweetheart, why take this on yourself?" Her expression became very serious. "Because Dad always told me that knowledge is power. And when he took my college money, I felt powerless. I didn't like that feeling." Michael returned to the living room looking defeated. "Jessica's bank has frozen her access to our joint account pending the fraud investigation. She's not happy." "I imagine not," I said. He looked at Abigail with a mixture of disbelief and grudging respect. "What exactly are you trying to accomplish with all this, Abigail?" She closed her laptop and met her father's gaze directly. "I want my college fund restored. All of it, plus the interest it would have earned. I want Mom's emergency fund repaid. I want the loan against your retirement account addressed in the divorce agreement." The clarity and confidence of her demands left both Michael and me speechless. "You're 12 years old," Michael finally said. "You can't dictate the terms of our divorce settlement." "I'm not dictating anything," Abigail replied. "I'm just making sure everyone has accurate information. The lawyers and judges can decide what happens next." She paused. "But if you don't agree to restore what you took, all my documentation will be submitted to the court, including the recordings of you teaching me how to track financial transactions." Michael's face flushed. "That sounds like blackmail." "It's not blackmail to tell the truth," she countered. "You taught me that too." His phone rang again, Jessica calling back. He ignored it this time, his eyes fixed on our daughter. "You really are my daughter, aren't you?" he said quietly, an odd note of pride in his voice despite the circumstances. "Yes," Abigail agreed. "And that's why I know you understand exactly what I've done, and why you can't dismiss me as just a kid." I watched this exchange with mixed emotions, pride in Abigail's brilliance and composure, concern about the adult role she had assumed in our family crisis, and lingering anger at Michael for creating this situation in the first place. "Abigail," I said gently, "could you give your father and me a few minutes alone?" She nodded, picking up her laptop. "I have backup copies of everything in secure cloud storage," she mentioned casually as she left the room. "Just so everyone knows." When she was gone, Michael and I sat in stunned silence for several moments. "She outsmarted me," he finally said, running a hand through his hair. "My own daughter." "She shouldn't have had to," I replied sharply. She should be worrying about middle school drama and science projects, not tracking financial fraud committed by her father. He had the decency to look ashamed. I never meant for things to go this far. What did you mean, Michael? When you started stealing from our children's future to fund your affair? What exactly did you envision happening? He had no good answer, of course. There was no justification that could make his actions understandable or forgivable. What are you going to do? He finally asked. I'm not going to do anything. I replied. Abigail has already done it. The question is, what are you going to do? Because your daughter has presented you with irrefutable evidence of financial misconduct that would not only guarantee I get everything in the divorce but might also interest your firm's compliance department and possibly law enforcement. The implications of this seemed to hit him all at once. His career, his professional reputation, possibly even his freedom were now at stake, all because he had underestimated the daughter he had so carefully taught about financial systems. I'll restore the money, he said quietly. All of it. The evening after Michael's confrontation with Abigail, I sat with my daughter on our back porch swing. Lucas was already asleep, exhausted from a day of deliberate normalcy I had created for him. A playdate with his best friend, his favorite pizza for dinner, and extra bedtime stories. What you did was extraordinary, I told Abigail, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. But I need to make sure you understand something important. She looked at me expectantly. There's a difference between what's technically possible and what's ethically right, I explained. The skills your father taught you are valuable, but how you use them matters. I didn't do anything illegal, she pointed out. No, you didn't. But you walked very close to some ethical lines, I said gently. In this case, you were using those skills to uncover the truth and recover what was wrongfully taken. But those same skills could be used in harmful ways. She considered this thoughtfully. Like how Dad used his financial knowledge to hide what he was doing. Exactly. Knowledge itself isn't good or bad. It's how we choose to use it. Abigail nodded slowly. I understand. I just wanted to fix what he broke. I put my arm around her shoulders. And you did. But from now on, let's agree that adult problems should be handled by adults. Your job is to be 12. Being 12 is what allowed me to solve this, she pointed out with a small smile. Dad never thought I'd understand enough to track what he did. I couldn't argue with that. Her age had indeed been her secret weapon in this situation. The legal process moved forward with surprising speed after Abigail's revelations. Michael, faced with the comprehensive documentation my daughter had assembled, agreed to a settlement that heavily favored our side. His attorney, upon reviewing the evidence, had apparently advised him that contesting these findings would be futile and potentially damaging to his professional career. Within 30 days, the college fund was fully restored, with additional funds added to account for lost growth. Michael agreed to assume all credit card debt he had accumulated and to refinance the home back into my name solely. Most importantly, he signed a legally binding agreement detailing a repayment plan for all misappropriated funds. The personal aftermath was more complicated. 2 weeks after our confrontation, Michael called to tell me he had ended his relationship with Jessica. She wasn't who I thought she was, he said, his voice heavy with regret. And who did you think she was? I couldn't help asking. Someone who cared about me, not my money, he replied. Once the joint account was frozen, and I told her I couldn't keep supporting her financially, he trailed off. I felt no satisfaction in his pain, only sadness for the destruction his choices had caused. I've made a terrible mistake, Catherine, he said. With counseling, maybe we could. No, I interrupted firmly. What you did wasn't just a betrayal of me, Michael. You betrayed our children's trust and security. Some things can't be fixed with apologies. Despite my resolve to proceed with the divorce, I did encourage Michael to maintain his relationship with the children. Lucas, especially, needed his father's presence. The transition to separate households was difficult for him, and he often cried after Michael's weekend visits, begging to know when Dad would come home for good. Abigail's relationship with her father was more complex. She participated in the visitations and maintained polite conversation, But the special bond they had shared over financial lessons and Sunday morning stock games was irreparably damaged. "I still love Dad," she told me one night after returning from a weekend at Michael's new apartment. "But I don't trust him anymore." Her words echoed my own feelings exactly. As spring turned to summer, our family gradually adjusted to our new reality. I threw myself into my work, finding unexpected satisfaction in the creative challenges of my job. When the threatened layoffs finally came, I was not only spared but promoted to senior director, with a substantial salary increase that helped ease our financial recovery. We established new traditions: Saturday morning pancakes instead of Sunday investment lessons, family movie nights, and a daily gratitude practice at dinner. Slowly, laughter returned to our home. The children's school provided excellent counseling resources, helping both Abigail and Lucas process their feelings about the family restructuring. Lucas's natural resilience emerged as he adapted to the new custody schedule, while Abigail found healthy outlets for her analytical mind through coding classes and financial literacy clubs at school. One evening in late August, I discovered Abigail sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop and a notebook, eerily reminiscent of how this whole situation had begun. "What are you working on?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual while fighting a surge of concern. She turned the screen so I could see. "I started my own investment account with the birthday money Grandma and Grandpa gave me. It's just a small managed portfolio for minors, completely legitimate. The bank required your signature. Remember?" I did remember authorizing the account, though I hadn't realized she had actually begun investing. "I'm tracking my returns and learning about different investment strategies," she continued. "Nothing flashy or risky, just index funds and a couple of blue chip stocks." I studied her face, looking for signs that this interest might be unhealthy, an obsession born from trauma. But all I saw was the natural curiosity and intelligence that had always defined her. "That sounds appropriate," I said carefully. "Just remember that there's more to being 12 than understanding compound interest." She laughed, a genuine carefree sound I hadn't heard in months. "Don't worry, Mom. I'm still doing normal kid stuff too. Emma invited me to join the school robotics team, and I'm thinking about trying out for the spring musical." Relief washed over me. Despite everything she had experienced, my daughter was finding her way forward, integrating the hard-won wisdom of recent months without being defined by it. The first holiday season after our separation brought its own challenges. Michael asked to join us for Thanksgiving dinner for the children's sake, and after much deliberation I agreed. The day was awkward but peaceful, with both Michael and I making conscious efforts to maintain civility and focus on the children's happiness. As we cleared the dishes together, an oddly domestic task given our circumstances, Michael spoke quietly. "You've done an amazing job with them, Catherine. Despite everything I put you all through, they're thriving. They're resilient," I replied, "more than either of us realized." He nodded, his eyes drifting to Abigail, who was teaching Lucas a card game in the living room. "She's extraordinary. I still can't believe how thoroughly she tracked everything down." "She learned from the best," I said, the words carrying a dual meaning we both understood. "I've been seeing a therapist," he offered after a moment, "trying to understand why I made the choices I did. It doesn't excuse anything, but I want to be better. For them, if nothing else." It was the first time since our separation that Michael had shown genuine introspection about his actions. While it didn't change my decision to move forward with our divorce, it did give me hope that he might become a more honest father to our children. That night, after Michael had left and Lucas was asleep, Abigail and I sat together on the couch, sharing the last piece of pumpkin pie. "That wasn't as weird as I thought it would be," she observed. "Having Dad here." "No," I asked. "I thought it was pretty awkward." She shrugged. "A different kind of awkward than I expected. Less angry, more sad." Her perception, as always, was spot on. "Do you think you and Dad will ever be friends?" she asked. I considered the question carefully. "I think we'll eventually find a way to be respectful co-parents. Friendship might be asking too much." She nodded thoughtfully. "That's fair." After a pause, she added, "I'm proud of us, Mom, for how we've handled everything." Looking at my wise, resilient daughter, I felt a surge of gratitude despite all the pain of recent months. I'm proud of us too. 1 year after discovering Michael's betrayal, our lives had found a new rhythm. The divorce was finalized, establishing clear financial and custody arrangements. I had not only kept our family home but had been able to refinance it at a favorable rate thanks to my promotion and restored credit. Most importantly, Abigail's college fund was not just restored but growing steadily again. On a warm Saturday in April, I sat on the sidelines of Lucas's soccer game, cheering as he raced up and down the field with newfound confidence. Beside me, Abigail was simultaneously watching her brother and reading an economics book that would have challenged many adults. "Mom," she said during halftime, closing her book, "remember when I said I thought we'd be stronger because of what happened with Dad?" "I do," I replied, curious where this was going. "I was right," she stated simply. "Look at us now." I followed her gaze across the field where Lucas was laughing with teammates, his earlier sadness replaced by the natural resilience of childhood. I thought about my own journey, from devastated wife to confident single mother, from financial victim to empowered provider. "We are stronger," I agreed, though I wish we could have found strength in easier ways. Abigail nodded thoughtfully. "The hard stuff teaches you more though. Dad taught me about money, but you taught me about integrity. That's worth more." Her insight brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "When did you get so wise?" She grinned. "Probably around the time I had to outsmart a financial analyst to save my college fund." 2 weeks later, Abigail received special recognition at her school's academic awards ceremony for an economics project she had developed. As we took our seats in the auditorium, I was surprised to see Michael already there, having arrived early to get a good spot. "I wouldn't miss this," he said when we approached. "She's presenting her project to the whole school." When Abigail took the stage, she spoke with remarkable poise about financial literacy for young people, explaining how understanding money management created independence and security. Without revealing our personal drama, she wove in lessons clearly derived from her experiences. "Knowledge isn't just power," she concluded. "It's protection, and everyone deserves to be protected." As applause filled the auditorium, I glanced at Michael and found him watching our daughter with a complex mixture of pride and regret. After the ceremony, as Abigail chatted with her teachers, Michael and I found ourselves momentarily alone. "She's extraordinary," he said quietly. "Yes, she is. Catherine," he hesitated. "I know I can never undo what I did, but I want you to know I'm still working on being someone they can be proud of. Someone who deserves to be their father." It was the most genuine thing he had said since our separation. For the first time, I sensed he truly understood the magnitude of what he had lost. "I hope you get there, Michael," I said honestly. "They deserve that." Over the following months, I watched cautiously as Michael worked to rebuild his relationship with our children. With Lucas, it was relatively straightforward: consistent time together, interest in his activities, and reliable follow-through on promises gradually restored the 8-year-old's trust. With Abigail, the process was more nuanced. Their shared interest in finance, once the foundation of their bond, had become complicated territory, but slowly they found new common ground: a mutual love of chess, discussions about books, and eventually careful conversations about lessons learned. "Dad apologized to me," Abigail told me after returning from a weekend visit in late summer. "Not just for taking the money but for breaking our trust. He said teaching me about finance and then misusing it himself was the worst kind of hypocrisy." "How did that make you feel?" I asked. She considered the question carefully. "Better than I expected. Not because it fixes anything but because he finally gets it. He understands why what he did was so wrong." My own healing took different forms. I rediscovered passions I had set aside during my marriage: painting, hiking, and playing the piano. I reconnected with old friends and made new ones, building a support network that had nothing to do with being Michael's wife. Most importantly, I established clear boundaries that protected my newly rebuilt sense of self. When a colleague asked me to dinner 6 months after my divorce was finalized, I surprised myself by saying yes. Nothing serious developed from that first date, but it opened the door to the possibility of future relationships built on mutual respect and honesty. Throughout this period of renewal, Abigail continued to demonstrate wisdom beyond her years, now channeled into age-appropriate outlets. Her interest in finance remained, but balanced by other pursuits, robotics club, piano lessons, and close friendships with classmates who shared her intellectual curiosity. One evening, as we prepared dinner together, she made an observation that stopped me in my tracks. "You know what's weird, Mom? Sometimes the people who hurt us teach us the most important lessons." I put down the knife I was using to chop vegetables and turned to face her. "What do you mean?" "Dad taught me about money to empower me. He didn't expect I'd use that knowledge against him when he did something wrong. But without those lessons, I wouldn't have been able to help us." She shrugged. "It's just ironic, I guess." Her insight captured perfectly the complicated legacy of Michael's betrayal. The painful lesson that had ultimately strengthened all of us, albeit in ways none of us would have chosen. As the second anniversary of our separation approached, I found myself reflecting on our journey while sorting through old photographs for a project. Among them was a picture taken at Abigail's 5th birthday, Michael holding her on his shoulders, both of them laughing, while I stood beside them holding baby Lucas. We looked like the perfect family, unaware of the challenges that lay ahead. Rather than bringing pain, the photo filled me with a surprising sense of peace. We hadn't been a perfect family, but we had created two remarkable children who were navigating life's complexities with courage and integrity. 6 years later, when Abigail was preparing for college tours, she asked to review her education fund, now fully restored and substantially grown. "I want to understand exactly what I'm working with before we start visiting schools," she explained. As we sat together reviewing the account statements, I marveled at how our journey had come full circle. The fund that had once represented such betrayal and loss now symbolized opportunity and promise. "Harvard is on my list," she mentioned casually. "But so is UW. I could commute from home and save money." "Abigail Mitchell," I said firmly, "you will go to whatever college best fits your goals, without worrying about money. That's what this fund is for." She smiled. "I know, but being careful with money is kind of our family tradition now, isn't it?" I laughed. "Fair point. But so is valuing education and opportunity. Your father did one thing right. He made sure you understood the importance of financial security. And you taught me that security isn't just about money," she replied. "It's about integrity and resilience." As we visited colleges that spring, Abigail, Lucas and I making a road trip adventure of it, I found myself reflecting on the unexpected gifts that had emerged from our family's most difficult chapter. We had all discovered strengths we never knew we possessed. Lucas had developed a remarkable capacity for adaptability. Abigail had learned to balance her analytical brilliance with emotional intelligence. And I had found a confidence and independence I might never have known had my marriage remained intact. The devastating betrayal that once threatened to destroy us had instead forced us to rebuild, not just our finances or our family structure, but our understanding of ourselves and what we were capable of overcoming. When people ask me now how we survived that difficult time, I often share what Abigail told me years ago. Sometimes the people who hurt us teach us the most important lessons, not because the hurt was necessary or justified, but because our response to it revealed character and capacity we might otherwise never have discovered. I don't know what challenges you might be facing in your own life right now. Perhaps you're dealing with betrayal, financial hardship, or the painful reconstruction of what you thought your life would be. So, I hope our story offers some reassurance that healing is possible, that children are remarkably resilient when guided with honesty and love, and that sometimes our greatest strengths are revealed precisely when we feel most broken. Have you ever discovered unexpected strength in a moment of crisis? Or found wisdom from an unlikely source? Perhaps even someone who hurt you? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to my channel and sharing this video with someone who might need to hear that there's hope on the other side of betrayal. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes our most powerful lessons come from our most painful experiences.